Coach Conaty, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hop on here. We were just kind of talking beforehand. It's really crazy times out here with this coronavirus, but glad that we can still have some community and still be able to, chop it up, get better, keep moving forward as individuals and as a profession. So for the listeners at home, will you tell us a little bit about your background, your motivation, and kind of where you are currently?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Sean Conaty. I grew up in upstate New York, was a basketball and a soccer player, was an undersized kid in basketball. So that's how I first got into training. Ended up having 3 knee surgeries in high school. So I spent a lot of time rehabbing and a lot of time sitting out, which actually, drew me to the weight room even more. And that's, my motivation, my passion, like really, grew there. Did undergrad at East Carolina University.
Okay.
And then obviously having 3 knee surgeries and kind of being out of athletics, I was able to get a jump start on my career. So right away in undergrad at ECU, started working as a personal trainer, started volunteering in the varsity weight room, was a biomechanics lab research assistant, and then just started doing more formal internships. So in undergrad, I spent a summer out in San Diego at Fitness Quest 10, where got good experience out there. Next summer, I was down at IMG Academy in Florida, where I got, a whole different side of the private sector experience. Got my master's degree at Springfield College in Massachusetts. While I was up there, I interned at Merrimack College outside of Boston, and interned at Springfield for a semester, and then left for half the year. It was an off-season intern with the Buffalo Bills. And finished that up, came back to Springfield as a GA. And that was my first time, programming for my own teams, running the show, and what it meant to be a strength coach. After Springfield, I had to do one more internship to get my master's degree, and went out to Eastern Michigan to work under Ron McKeefrey. My motivation at that point was I wanted to work under a master strength coach or a CSCCA approved mentor to get the CSCCA certification. So went out to Eastern Michigan, did a summer as an intern, stayed on for the next fall semester as a part-time coach, and then got my first full-time job at Christopher Newport University in Newport News, Virginia. So D3 school, I was programming for 10 sports, and again, just had a really good opportunity to be around new people, to train, to coach, to really develop and hone my skill set. After a year and a half there, an opportunity arose where I got to go back to Eastern Michigan, this time as an assistant sports performance coach, working with basketball, soccer, and golf. And I spent 3 seasons at Eastern Michigan, which led me to where I'm at now. I'm coming up on 1 year as director of sports performance for Olympic sports here at the University at Buffalo. So back in the home state of New York, and just rolling.
No, that's quite a journey. And then, with that, what would you say on the diversity of your experiences, right? So you were at, you said Fitness Quest, and then you did some other private sector stuff, and then including IMG, right? So in terms of experiences, right, you've had a lot of diverse experiences, whether it be interning at, for example, Fitness Quest, or, working at East Carolina, or even with Ron McKeefrey. And so what would you say in terms of speaking on your experiences there and how that's kind of helped shape your path and your vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important just to get a wide range and diversity of experiences. The field is so big, and that got, preached to me really early on in my career is, everyone in undergrad at ECU wants to be a strength coach. But even being a strength coach, there's so many different avenues that you can go down. So it's important not to get pigeonholed into one and to just get all that experience, kind of figure out what the best fit is for you. Fit's a big thing for me, but even just talking about like professional development and like how our career should kind of mature, I think it's important to get as much experience with wide range of sports, athletes, all this kind of stuff as you can before you kind of narrow it down into, whatever avenue it is you want. I think it's only going to make you a better coach. So for me, like I can say from IMG Academy, working, with youth athletes and then high school athletes, all the way up to, private sector, working off-season NBA, like pro athletes. Then Springfield College, CNU, I worked Division III. Merrimack College, I worked Division II. Eastern Michigan, University of Buffalo, Division I. Buffalo Bills, professional, NFL environment. Fitness 10, small private sector. IMG, big private sector. You know what I mean? So biomechanics lab research assistant. So I was on the research side. Personal training, I'm on a whole different side. So kind of had my foot in all those different doors. Obviously, yeah, you pull from all those different experiences. If you want to talk about mentors or just learning about different leadership styles, communication styles, you learn from the people you're under. But to me, more importantly, I think you learn from the people that you coach and your peers and the people that you're around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's to me, like, honestly, I lived in 7 different states in 7 years at one point in this field. And so, to me, I just feel like my worldview is a lot bigger than the people that I grew up with in New York that never left New York and went to college in New York. You know what I mean? So it's like you just meet all these different people, and just, to me, it makes you a better person. It makes you have a little bit bigger, perspective on things. And I wouldn't have it any other way. You got friends all over the country, all over the world at this point.
Yeah, exactly. You just become more well-rounded, I guess. So I like that. Okay. I mean, that must be tough in terms of, the trips and moving. Moving's not fun. So that must have been quite a journey as well.
Yeah, but that's what I signed up for. I knew in my 20s there was going to be a lot of traveling, a lot of moving, and that was what was exciting for me.
Yeah.
I know, and we've all had these conversations with, like, kind of that second generation of strength coaches that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and I'm sure the moving and the traveling and getting fired and all this kind of stuff it takes a toll on your family, and it's an extreme sacrifice. It really is, and I know I don't want to be doing all that traveling forever.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is what I signed up for at this point. I knew to get to where I wanted to be, you were going to have to get all this different type of experience and take all these different opportunities. And, what 18, 19, 20-year-old doesn't want to be from New York and then go to California, or, you know what I mean? Like, you want to soak that type of stuff up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. And so kind of segueing into the training piece a little bit here, right? So what is your training philosophy, generally speaking?
Generally, and as simple as I can put it, my philosophy is to get athletes better, to win games. Like, to me, that's everything it comes down to.
Yeah.
And we could talk philosophy forever, but as the older I get in this profession, as the more I've been around, like, to me, that's more where I'm at. I don't like to get pigeonholed in a certain box.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any gang affiliations with any type of training method and modalities. To me, you got to be well versed in all of them.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out a creative way to blend them all together. What I like to articulate is, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek and all of his books, and Start With Why and the Golden Circle. And to me, when you have a paradigm and frame it as, the starting with why and building out your how and your what, doesn't matter if you are an Olympic lifting guy, if you are a powerlifting or West Side guy or HIIT training or strictly track and field based, whatever it is, those are all what you do, but your how should all be similar, no matter what method or mode you're using. Like, your how should be to improve athletic performance, to reduce risk of injury, however you want to articulate it. For me, I've always kind of said it as prepare, protect, perform, or even pave, prepare, protect, perform. Those 4 things kind of having that alliteration.
Yeah.
Pave, to me, is building relationships.
Yeah.
Before you do any of the training, obviously you got to have a relationship there. Like, don't go coach up a kid if you don't know his name. Like, all these basic things that we hear all the time.
Yeah.
But the relationship piece for me is huge, because that's why I'm in collegiate strength and conditioning. That's why I like working with that 18 to 23, 24-year-old population. The relationship piece is crucial for me. But you got to have that before you can move forward with the training.
Yeah.
Prepare your athletes, just obviously preparing for the demands of the sport. You could talk energy system development. You could talk stress management. That was one thing that Coach McKeefer said early on, in my internship with him, was really, as strength coaches, we're just stress managers. We induce a stress, we regulate a stress. That's all it is, looking at it from a holistic model. So to me, that's got to be our why. That's what we're doing. Protect the athletes, obviously reduce risk of injury, got to build up some body armor. We got to make them resilient athletes. Everything we do in the weight room has to keep them healthy and keep on the court. And then perform on the court, the field, whatever their avenue is, but mostly just increase their level of athleticism, right? Increase their biomotor abilities, bioenergetic abilities, all those kind of things. So pave, prepare, protect, perform. Those are my, that's my why. Everything else I do around it, how we get there, what we do, is all going to kind of be athlete specific, sport specific, all those kinds of things. But to me, I blend, different elements of track and field in there. There's going to be some elements of jumps and throws. I do like the Olympic lifts and the Olympic lift variants. Not everybody is going to be doing a full pull and a catch.
Yeah.
I do like introducing it. I do like doing complexes. I think, teaching the hinge pattern, teaching triple extension is going to be incredibly important. And then we are to do different strength movements. So elements of powerlifting. We do, a lot of bilateral squatting, but we do also a lot of unilateral squatting. So when I talk about gang, affiliations, I don't think it has to be, black and white. It's not this or that. Like, you can't just be an Olympic lifting guy or you're a powerlifting guy. Like, to me, we're going to do elements of both. You're not a bilateral squat guy or a unilateral squat guy. Clearly there's elements of both, but that's kind of the art of coaching and artfully blending them into your program.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. And so with that, right, do you always see yourself, or did you always see yourself working with basketball? Was that like a route that you really wanted to take?
As a strength coach, no. As a strength coach, I just wanted to be a coach. I just loved weight room, loved athletes, loved helping people. Not even like athletes. Obviously, like I said, as an 18-year-old, I got a personal trainer certification and had 4 years of undergrad work in general pop too. You know what I mean? So I just liked coaching people and helping people, and this environment of, physical preparation was it for me. Like, that was my playing field. Basketball is my first love. Like, ask anyone that I grew up with, being, in fifth and sixth grade, like, I was obsessed with basketball. Being an undersized small kid on all my basketball teams is what got me into training. But I love the sport. Like, I can't do it now, but when I was in fifth grade, like, you could name any player and I know what college they came from. Straight from high school, I know, what high school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I loved basketball, but it wasn't until I interned at IMG Academy that when I was working their NBA combine groups and their NBA off-season groups and got more and more responsibilities, working in that basketball realm, that, we talk about like fit. That was just a great fit for me. You know what I mean? Coming from being from New York and playing basketball and that culture, all of a sudden now, you relate to that athlete more. Like the buy-in, all that kind of stuff was just a great fit. And then, we could talk about this too. I mean, strength and conditioning, the many different avenues and things that go into it, more than just lifting weights, more than just the weight room, right? When it comes to dealing with sports nutrition, which is huge, when it comes to dealing with sports science and analytics, when it comes to educating an athlete on proper sleep hygiene, all these kind of things, there's so much that goes into performance, the mental side of things. Performance isn't just lifting weights, right? There's so much that goes into it, and I got a passion for all of it, and I want to have my hand in all of it. And when you have a team of 15 basketball players, it's much easier for you to connect on a deeper level with those 15 guys and play a role in everything performance, as opposed to if you got a football team of 100 guys, or if you're working multiple Olympic sports and football, and like at CNU, on any given day, I would literally coach over 300 athletes.
Wow.
And so that's awesome, and you love it, but you're strictly in the weight room. You're lifting them, conditioning. That's it. You try and do as best you can with everything else, but there's only so much that you can actually do. So instead of kind of like going 50% on all these things, you just got to go all in on what you can control. Whereas in the basketball realm, not only is it a great fit for me because I love the sport of basketball, but just the dynamics of it allows you to do a little bit more when it comes to physical preparation.
That's a good way to put it. Okay. And so with that, right, two of the sports that you work with basketball and volleyball, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And so would you just kind of compare and contrast a couple of those factors that we talked about, right, within the in-season or even, for example, off-season microcycle, or let's go bigger, I guess, like a mesocycle?
Yeah, so I mean, both of them are on-court sports. So you see a lot of departments kind of pairing up all the on-court sports, right? When it comes to key performance indicators of those sports, definitely volleyball is vertical jump and specifically their touch height, right? So key performance indicator of what we're doing as a strength coach is going to be, are we improving their touch height? Now, key performance indicator in basketball, your approach jump, vertical jump, more so with the athletes. Athletes want to get bouncier. A lot of coaches, they like that metric, but I mean, a lot of it is going to be kind of your east to west, lateral quickness, speed, all that kind of stuff. But the key performance indicators are similar. The demands of the sport, jump count, contacts, all this kind of stuff are very, very similar. The difference, really, if you want to get down to like programming, the difference is going to be, Basketball, the NCAA rules allow us to have a mandatory off season, whereas volleyball, everything is voluntary
Yeah.
until like August 1st when they come in here for a preseason.
Yeah.
So when you talk acute to chronic workload ratios, when you talk injuries and what causes injuries, basketball, we're able to develop, kind of chronic preparedness in that 8 weeks and then kind of a 4-week cycle before we get into preseason.
Yeah.
Where the rules on volleyball is everything's voluntary. They don't have to stay on campus. And all of a sudden, a coach could get them on August 1st after they might not have done anything for months and
for a
we do
whole summer.
two-a-days.
Yeah.
Now that acute workload spikes.
Yeah.
And so how do we manage that? And that, to me, that's where, how do we develop, buy-in and trust to get them to stay on campus and actually train with us?
Yeah.
Or if there's external circumstances and they have to go do an internship or they have to work, how do you get them invested in the training process? How do you get them to own the training process so they see the value in that and know that they need to handle business? Because whether we do anything or not, that August 1st two-a-day is coming and that workload is going to spike and we need to be ready for it, right?
Yeah.
So the training during the summer is going to be different. Fortunately, this year, this was my first summer in Buffalo. Fortunately, we had a really good group of female volleyball players that stayed, and we'd be training 5 days a week with them.
Okay.
And to build that, chronic preparedness.
Yeah.
Now, you want to talk in season with them. Volleyball's in season is significantly shorter than basketball's.
Okay.
Right? Volleyball was still in season when basketball started their season. So I was just telling that to our volleyball team a week ago when they were asking, what my plans were for spring break and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, look, I need some time off.
Yeah.
I'm just finishing basketball season.
Yeah.
And, we're kind of in the midst of our off season right now with volleyball. And I was like, we're just finishing our in season. We were in our in season while you guys were still in season. You know what I'm saying? So like a basketball in season being 6 months long, you have a lot longer to continue to develop those athletes and continue to train.
Yeah.
And then also, if you want to break up a basketball season into non-conference versus conference, it's really 2 months of kind of chaos and a lot of traveling and maybe 3 games a week. And like the schedule's all over the place, but your conference schedule for those 2 months, 2.5 months, it's going to be real formalized. And we kind of know what every kind of practice is going to look like, what every lift is going to look like. And just kind of the culture of the sports, there's a higher frequency of training in season with basketball.
Yeah.
So they're pretty much in with me every single day. Where volleyball, and not to cut short volleyball, because compared to other schools I've worked at, our in-season program was we'd train 2 times a week, and then 1 time would be like a recovery mobility day. So they're in with me 3 times a week, as opposed to some programs where it might be just 2 or maybe even 1 or whatever it is. So, to me, it definitely comes down to the culture of the sport and how the sport coach wants to run everything as well.
Okay. And so with that, right, I know a lot of people across the country have varying opinions on this in terms of training different positions with different density or maybe even some slightly different exercise progressions. What is your take on that for both sports?
Yeah, again, there's something to that. You kind of got to meet it in the middle. It's not, absolutely, or no, we don't do that. It's, there's going to be some biomechanical differences. There's going to be some energetic differences in those sports. When we mentioned earlier, like acute chronic workload, there's going to be, specifically like in volleyball too, jump contact is going to be different for certain positions. So you need to take that in consideration. But the paradigm that I'm kind of on is everything is more athlete-centered. You take into consideration their position, but when it comes to that kind of autonomy and individualization, it's getting the most out of where that athlete is, not, you play this position, we need to do this. You know what I'm saying? So you take that into consideration, and again, you kind of blend that with the individual assessment of that athlete. For assessment purposes, early off-season, like where we're at right now, I like to get your baseline again. Let's get some sort of movement screen, whatever metrics are important to you. Half kneeling, ankle mobility, looking at how far can we get the shin over the toes, and actually with a goniometer get that degree measurement. Doing the FMS. Now I like the FMS because if you build your exercise, corrective exercise pool off of it, now all of a sudden you can still do your global mobility, corrective movements within the team, but now you can really individualize those corrective exercise prescriptions based off of it. And especially early in the off season at this point, it's just good for athletes to kind of take a little bit more ownership and autonomy and give them something individualized to work on. But get your anthropometric measurements. get them in the bod pod, get their height, get their body fat, figure out where their body's at, figure out how they're moving, and get whatever performance metrics you want off of it. And now let's see over the course of our different training blocks, are we actually improving performance? Are we actually improving their movement? Are we actually improving their body composition? So to me, a lot of that goes into the training prescription throughout the year. But again, being around the sport, being cognizant of the fact that, especially when we talk about training loads, our guards in basketball versus our bigs, their training loads in practice are going to be different because even though we got a team practice, when we break off an individual skill work, I know that for a lot of what we do, there's certain drills that our centers and forwards, that's going to be a lot more tactical what the guards do, versus when we also go into different, full court games, might be a lot more taxing when we're doing half court stuff with our guards and versus full, you know what I mean? So you take all the position stuff into consideration. You look at where the team is at, you look at where each individual position is at, and then ultimately the individual athlete is what's going to drive our interventions. And that's with our training program, that's with any sports science technology and how we break down data. That's kind of how I view it.
Okay. And so you mentioned energetics, right? And so talking about energetics, I think there's like two main ideas with training energetics, right? Some people like to go play yourself into shape within terms of the sport, and some people are more heavy strength and conditioning based, where they do like running lines, for example, or more aerobic, or just working on specific energy systems. What kind of approach do you like, and why?
I would say I don't think we as strength coaches can get them in shape for games. At least I haven't seen it. I think we can get them in shape for practice, then practice can get them in shape for games. Or at least if I don't say I don't think we can, I'll say the best model that I've worked with is us preparing them for practice and then educating the sport coach on how to run practice to prepare them for games. Right. So I think from an energy system standpoint, where we're at right now, early off season, we need to build our aerobic capacity, build the engine. We need to strengthen our tissue to handle stress in the off season, build chronic preparedness all off season, raise that level. What I like about our situation here is, we really get after it in the summer. Like it's a 4-and-4 rule. We got 4 hours in the weight room, 4 hours on the court. But we run full team practice throughout the summer. Now, a previous school I was at, we didn't do that at all. It was like all strength and conditioning based. Now, as a strength coach, you love that. You're like, this is my time. Let's get it rolling. But then when we would play in season a team that had been rolling with basketball since June, July, there's a very big difference, right? Especially when you layer not just the physical, but like the technical, tactical aspects as well. There's a big difference between being even in great shape and being even in what we would consider basketball shape to now having a ball in your hands and have to make the cognitive abilities to make a play or to react to a changing environment, right? So my favorite form of conditioning is, we build up the aerobic capacity. We'll do some aerobic power, some anaerobic capacity, anaerobic power as the off season goes on, general to specific, lots of tempo runs, just trying to kind of open up the guys. We do a lot of form running and just basic movement stuff. It's great coaching at this point of the year. We do get a little bit more time with them. Our Airdyne bikes, we're getting a VersaClimb this summer, just the low impact conditioning, the metabolic circuits, all that kind of stuff is great for this time of year. But as we get into the season, we got to set up practice to prepare them for the game. And so what we do now is got a great relationship with our athletic trainer, a great relationship with our sport coach. But what we want to do is, hey, let's quantify the volume and intensities of every drill that we're putting into practice. So now we can literally say these drills are going to elicit these adaptations. If we want a high intensity practice, we know there's certain technical, tactical things we need to do. Now we can pull from this drawer to get the right physical adaptations, right? Because sport coaches, they know the game, but they don't necessarily know the body or the physical adaptations the same way that we do. So if we go about it in the right way, that's how we can add more value to the basketball staff and really be an assistant basketball coach that handles physical preparation. Right. So whether it's something that's free and subjective like session RPEs, or whether we're diving into objective measures, externally with GPS or internally with heart rate, we can quantify, what each drill is, what the cost and the volume and intensity of each practice is, and build out our microcycles of practice that week, because that's what's going to be the most taxing on our athletes. It's not when we talk about October, November in the weight room, and just in general, the weight room isn't the most taxing on the athletes. We're still training, we're getting after it, but those 3-hour daily practices and our traveling, the games, that's going to be the most taxing on the athletes' nervous system. So if we really are stress managers, let's manage that stress. But to manage something, you need to understand what it is first. You got to quantify it. So let's start early on by quantifying practice, quantifying the drills, breaking those down. And then what we find when it comes to energy system development is, as we move into the season, again, your question, should we play basketball or should we do more conditioning? Because I've been on both ends of the spectrum. Well, if we have if there's 7 days in a week and 1 day is mandatory to be off, right? So now we got six work days. Well, 2 of those are going to be game days, right? Now, the way most basketball programs run is usually only about 8 guys get minutes. So you're talking about half the team doesn't get any training load on 1/3 of our work week. And then if you think acute and chronic workload ratios, right? Now all of a sudden we're dropping into that red zone where acute chronic workload might be at like a 0.7 now, right? So what happens when someone gets injured? Well, that person who's off the bench, who's not getting any minutes, if you didn't account for that drop in training load, you didn't account for energy system development, now that workload is going to spike, and that's where we see a lot of injuries. So how do we combat that? Well, in the past, it's been, okay, low minute guys are with Coach Sean, and you get extra conditioning the day after the games, and all that stuff is great, and there's a place for it. But again, the older I get, the more years and reps I get, what I found to be better is, how about we set up practice differently for those low minute guys? And inherently, it's kind of going to happen, right? They're going to be on the scout team, so they're going to get extra reps. They're going to get less rest. Our high minute guys are going to have a little bit reduced training load, and they're going to get more rest, right? So we start to see those training loads balance in those 2 or 3, 4 practices that we get throughout the week and within our 2 games, right?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And then you talked a little bit about, objective versus subjective measures. Do you guys use a lot of technology over where you are?
So we look at training load and recovery, and that's just kind of how we articulate it to our athletes. So, on a daily routine for us is, athletes will usually be in the building about 6:45 in the morning, where we provide a breakfast for them, right? We're going to lift every day at 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, what I found to be best is I meet the athletes in the locker room at about 6:55. They all had their breakfast done. We have heart rate belts waiting for them in their locker. They put the heart rate belts on. They're sitting in their chairs. I text out a subjective wellness questionnaire from, it's just 10 questions. So, whether it's just from lifting and there's 23 other hours of the day that's going to, accumulate stress, or whether we're bigger picture lifting and basketball, now there's 20 other hours of the day that accumulate stress. We just want to get some type of subjective reading on where their nervous system is at, how are they eating, how's their sleep, nutrition, academic load, all these kinds of things. But from an athlete compliance standpoint, I text it out to them, and it takes 30 seconds. They fill it out right in front of me in the morning. They got their heart rate belt on, and then we do a 3-minute quick recovery test looking at HRV. So this is through first beat. So now by 7 o'clock, we've got a subjective wellness question, a subjective measure of readiness, and we have an objective measure of readiness, and then we lift. Now, to me, the single best thing that we do when it comes to data and technology is the subjective wellness questionnaire. The last question on it, just an open-ended question. Just if there's anything athletes need to tell me, if there's any part that's sore or beat up, unusual, it's an open-ended question, right? I want all our data, all our tech to drive face-to-face interactions with the athletes and to show them that it's actionable. And that open-ended question shows athletes that, hey, what we're doing is purposeful, it's meaningful, and it's kind of like, safety nets for our safety nets. It's that first check where we're not going to miss something, right? And it could be, literally, it's come from, someone fell in practice, banged their knee really hard, wasn't bad yesterday. When they woke up this morning after sleeping on it, it was real stiff. We need to adjust the lift for them. That's perfect. Now, obviously, we're in constant communication with an athletic trainer and stuff like that. Normally, we would know about. But in those situations where they go home, they feel fine, they wake up, it's different. I'm the first one seeing them today, so I need to know if I need to modify the lift.
Yeah.
More than that, our athletic trainer has access to it, so they get flagged. So that means if you get flagged on that, instead of this being a chronic thing where you're always hurting, you get flagged and we need to modify something. That means we set up your schedule so that from 8 to 9 is treatments. And now you got to go to our athletic trainer and we need to take care of this so it doesn't become a chronic thing.
Yeah.
But that open-ended question has also opened up things where new guys to the program don't have rides, or there's other stuff going on outside that, everything is so busy. We all got so much stuff to manage. Not everyone can know everything about everyone.
Yeah.
So even our basketball coaches might miss something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I can open up that line of communication where I can open up something with that is affecting the athlete's behavior, which is affecting their output and the way we're perceiving something, I can kind of overlook, okay, this guy's late, write this guy off and put him in punishment, whatever. I can get right to the root of what's causing it because there's that line of communication and we can address things early on. So that open-ended question, all the other questions is 1 to 5, right?
Yeah.
How is your sleep quantity? A 5 is 8+ hours. A 1 is you got less than 5 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the other ones are 1 to 5, but the open-ended question is extremely important. But continue on with our day. We hit the weight room. In the weight room, once to twice a week, we're going to continue with more weight room specific measure of readiness, kind of move and jump on a just jump mat, right? So we train that, and that's obviously going to, with a Z score, we're going to kind of show the deviation and how much loading we can do on the guys for that day.
Okay.
8 to 9, again, guys got treatment, then they got academics. They come back for practice at 11, and during practice, we put the heart rate, first beat heart rate monitors on again. So now we are, instead of looking at readiness, now we're actually quantifying training load internally with first beat. And then we also use catapult. So we're quantifying training load externally with catapult.
Okay.
Now, for us with training load, everything comes down to volume and intensity. There's a million different metrics that you could look at, but that's all we're really trying to measure. So with first beat, volume is going to be trimp, training impulse. Intensity is going to be trimp per minute, so the volume per minute, right? With catapult, volume is going to be your player load. Your intensity is going to be player load per minute. So we look at those two. And then at the end of practice, just like I text out a wellness questionnaire, at the end of practice, I text out session RPE.
Okay.
Now I make it really simple. I text one to the athletes. I text one to the coaching staff.
Yeah.
It's just a simple scale of 1 to 10 and clear criteria to show, how difficult you thought practice was.
Yeah.
That put into a Google sheet, and then I add the duration of practice. Those two get multiplied to have an arbitrary number for session RPE. But you have the athlete session RPE, you have the coach session RPE.
Yeah.
Now, what I like about that is, again, the technology for me is just used as an education tool.
Naturally, yeah.
A tool to drive conversation.
Yeah.
So if the coaches are the ones that are applying the most stress to our athletes via their practice plan, via controlling playing time, all this kind of stuff. Well, as a strength coach, as a stress manager, I want to educate them on that stress.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times you're going to see coaching staff thinks, practice was, way lighter than the athletes thought it was. And what I found is session RPE matched up really well with our external, internal objective measures. So, educate the athletes well enough on RPE, you can kind of quantify, what that training load is. There's been certain situations in my career, going back to, my previous school, when I was at Eastern, during the summer, we didn't have a lot of formal team practices, all individual skill work. So now when we start up preseason and we have that first formal team practice, coaching staff's thinking it's going to be extremely difficult for the athletes.
Yeah.
We built that chronic preparedness because we had movement days with me every day. We did a ton of conditioning. Athletes were ready for practice. So practice was extremely easy for them. So that was a unique week where it's like coaches thought it was really difficult. Athletes thought it was light. Again, if athletes think it's light, matching up with their objective measures, it probably was light. So what's the adaptation? Well, if we stay too long here, we might be detraining, right? What does every coach want to hear? Hey, we're good to go. Let's ramp it up a little bit. So we're able to do that. But on the other end, we're able to just educate the coaching staff a bit more on how they are actually applying stress. And again, if you break down each segment of practice, each drill, now we know what, ball handle, like 5-on-0 offense, first zone defense, for Martelli drill, all these different things. Now we know the volumes and intensities of them and when to apply them, when we need a high, moderate, a low intensity and volume practice day.
Okay, so you're covering a lot of bases there, which I think is a unique approach, right? I think a lot of people go in either one camp or the other, and whether that's because of, financials or whatever. I think it's awesome that you guys cover like everything, right? We're going objective, we're going subjective, we're educating the athletes, we're educating the coaches, right? Which is a great model to have. So that's really fantastic to hear.
And I'll just say this too, though. I mean, financially,
yeah,
everything that I just said, everything that I just said, we're just paying for first beat right now through basketball, but like the subjective wellness questionnaire, the session RPEs, all that kind of stuff, I built all that out in Google Form and a Google Sheet.
Yeah.
Now, if I did have a bigger budget, and we might move this route down the road, but if you use some type of athlete management system that has those questionnaires and stuff for them, by all means, you can go that route.
Yeah.
But first beat, we saw value in it. The basketball staff saw value in it. So the basketball staff bought it. It wasn't out of our strength budget, you know. Catapult initially with them was a free trial.
Yeah.
And then getting the basketball staff invested in it. You know what I mean? And then taking over this job, I inherited a Just Jump mat. So all this kind of stuff, I just want to make it clear, all this kind of stuff, you don't have to have a huge budget to do it. And that's a mistake I made early on in my career is when I interned with the Buffalo Bills in 2013, they were one of the first NFL teams to use GPS. So early on, I get exposed to Catapult and all this technology, and it was so foreign to me.
Yeah.
But a whole summer diving into it, learning it. And then I leave and I go to Springfield College to be a GA at a D3 school where I'm programmed for my own teams. And I'm thinking, man, there's no way I can, every GA took what they learned that summer and applied it to their teams as a GA, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, a lot of what I was doing with the technology, I can't apply it. Well, I missed the boat on that. I didn't look at, I was looking at the tech. I was looking at the hardware. I wasn't looking at what were we trying to accomplish doing that, and how can I do that here?
Yeah.
So then when I went to CNU, same thing, a D3 school with minimal to no budget, I said, okay, well, there's going to be value here. Let's quantify allostatic load. If we're getting athletes in the weight room and I got 10 teams and every day I'm only seeing my athletes when they're in the weight room. When we talk about a dose response relationship, the training program and the dose that I'm giving wasn't necessarily the readiness response I was seeing as they would come in, because I wasn't taking into consideration that more is going on in their life than just this training program.
Yeah.
Me doing my own training in the different cycles, I know how I'm feeling, I know how I'm bouncing back from it, but I don't have a 3-hour practice. I don't have, I'm not up all night studying for final, all this kind of stuff. So just a simple wellness questionnaire through Google and trying to get that up and running, we were able to kind of make strides and bridge that gap and just kind of figure out what's the purpose, what's the intent behind it, not just what it, a flashy, fancy name and trying to throw a lot of money at it. And with that, I would discourage a lot of strength coaches from growing too fast. Don't try and add all these pieces at once. Start slow and then slowly build it out. I keep telling people the process around your data collection is directly correlated with the success of your interventions and implementation. If you on the front end don't set up a sound logistical process, you're going to create a whole lot more work for yourself than you need to. So I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the shiny things in the big data. So that's a great word of advice there. And then kind of moving forward here toward the end, and in terms of some professional development, right? What are some resources that have had a big impact on you?
Man, the biggest resources that have an impact on me is just people, for real. Just like anyone, obviously, I listen to a ton of podcasts and I read different books, and I'm always researching and learning. But like we talked about earlier, the mentors, the people that you came up under in the profession, they play a big role on you, and picking their brain and continuing that relationship, even years down the road now. I was on a Skype call with Coach McCaffrey 2 days ago. It just constantly work those relationships. But then, and he brought up a great point when I was speaking to him. Not only is it the coaches you're working under, but the coaches that you're working around, the interns. Some of the intern class, pretty much every intern class I've ever been a part of, which I worked for free and all this for 5 years, 5 different intern classes, you know what I'm saying? And those are some of my best friends in the world. And continue to do amazing things in this field. And so, and I told that to them, not just my best friends in the profession, but just best friends in general. The relationships that you bring, and even yesterday, right, dealing with this coronavirus, dealing with this changing environment. How are we going to move forward? The people that I was texting yesterday to brainstorm and work our way through it is all the people I came up with in this profession.
Yeah.
They're a texter and we're constantly working that. And, you pick up the phone to call them and, life gets you sometimes. Sometimes it might be a full year before you speak to some of them. But when you pick up that phone, it's like no time had passed at all.
Yeah.
Right. So like when it comes to, professional development and stuff, man, just your network is everything. The people you surround yourself with is everything. More than just strength coaches, sport coaches too.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is just from my own experience, like 2 jobs, my last 2 jobs, sport coaches really were the ones that got me those jobs. It wasn't strength coaches.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, it was sport coaches that you work for going to bat for you and calling the sport coach that's pulling the strings, and they get you hired.
Yeah.
So we do need to have our big strength coach network. We do need to rely on that, but to be smart about the way our profession's going, be smart with your network of sport coaches too. So that means when you're an intern, and just my own experience too, when I was at Eastern Michigan and I was an intern and then I was part-time, I'm assisting with football, I'm assisting with basketball. Well, the way the department was set up at that time was every full-time strength coach was all hands on deck with football. Yeah. So when football had practice in the fall, basketball had practice in the fall, women's basketball practice in the fall, everybody's out warming up football. Yeah. So me, being young, I'm saying, hey, you want me to go warm up basketball then, just so that's covered? Yeah, why not? Go take care of them. Yeah. So now every day I'm warming up basketball. I'm developing a relationship not with just those athletes, but those coaches, right? So those coaches know me now. Yeah. And year and a half, 2 years down the road, when a basketball position opens up, who do you think they're calling to come back there? You know what I mean? So I tell this to all our interns all the time is when you're interning here, like it's got to be natural. It can't be forced, but like you got to say hi to, you got to know everybody in the building. The janitor, you should be their best friend, to all the way up to our associate AD of sports medicine, associate AD of business, whatever. Like you got to know everybody in the building and make a positive impression with them, have them know who you are, because then when you leave as an intern, which happens, it's very rare that you go right from interning to being full-time at that spot. Yeah. Very, very rare, right? You're gonna leave and we're gonna try and set you up for a job. But when you leave, everyone's got to feel your presence being gone now. They got, where's so-and-so at? Like, you know what I mean? They got to know. And then when a job does open up, which we see how it happens in this field, it's going to happen. And now all of a sudden you want to get back in here. Again, it's not just working one angle. You got to have as much ties and strings as you can to that position. And so when everybody else in the building is saying, oh, you need to bring so-and-so back, like that's what it's really about. Yeah. That's like the big piece of advice I would give to young strength coaches. It's got to be authentic. Yeah. It can't be about you, but just be a good person. And like we went back, when we started this conversation on being a little bit more diverse and worldly and just being more well-rounded, learn from everybody. You can learn something from everyone, and it doesn't have to directly be about strength and conditioning. It can just be about life, about how to have a little bit more empathy and dealing with people and just like communicate and talk to people. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I think a lot of young coaches don't really realize that fact, right? They're worried about networking, but only with specific people, right? And so the biggest thing, like you said, is networking with the people around you and the people that you probably don't think you should be making relationships with, right? Like the sport coaches. So I think that's a really good piece of advice. And then continuing on here, right? Just the last couple things here. If you have any, what are some quotes that you live by?
Man,
this is the part that always gets people. This last section here.
Yeah, well, I do like quote, and I mean it depends on what my mood is for that day, right? But I mean I'm big into music and the movies. Yeah. I'll give you a movie one from The Departed. Is I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me. That one I think as strength coaches that be the thermostat, not the thermometer, like all that type of stuff. Like you want your environment to be a product of you. You don't want to succumb to your circumstances. I think that's something that I think about daily. In A Bronx Tale, he talks about, the saddest thing in life is wasted talent.
Great movie.
I think about that a lot. I think something that motivates, that quote, saddest thing in life is wasted talent. To me, that goes into regret. And like regret and just knowing that we're only here on this earth for a short period of time and not wanting to die with regrets. And that's a big motivator for me. When you talk about quotes that motivate you, that's that gets you going. You know, you got
Yeah.
no time to waste. You gotta soak up this life and live it to the fullest.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Okay. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
Um, the best advice, probably, uh, I mean, I don't want to say something cliche like
Yeah.
be yourself or be authentic, but
Yeah.
like truthfully, I mean, I've been told that a million times and I stand by that. Like you, I guess you need to know yourself
Mm-hmm.
before you can know others and coach others and all, you know what I mean? You've got to be confident with yourself and be grounded,
Yeah.
and not, and be mimicking everyone. So, I mean, that's something that stands out with me, but, um, man, I don't know. The best advice really is just when it comes to coaching, when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to leadership, all this kind of stuff. Like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you know, multiple people have told me it's not one or the other. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking work-life balance type
Yeah.
of deal. It's not, you can't be 100 miles here and then 0 here and all this. It's constantly going to be a fluid blend. But that, I guess the advice then would be kind of like the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Mm.
You know, like if you want to be an elite strength coach,
Yeah.
and you want to get the job, you want to, well, the way you do everything and approach everything has to be elite, and that's going to speak volumes. You know what I mean? So that's a mindset thing. That's a behavior thing.
Yeah.
And I'm diving into behavior with my athletes now. Like behaviors is what drive everything. We talk about, you know, does the past predict the future? And
Mm-hmm.
most people think past predicts the future. Well, the past is going to tell you probably what the behavior is going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the behavior predicts the future. If you can change the behavior, you could change the outcome of the future. And so, you know, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If you change that behavior in the way that you are dealing with your peer group and your family or your finances, your academics, you're probably going to start to change the behavior of the way that, you know, you approach training, you approach basketball, volleyball, whatever it is. So that's, you know, kind of that's a quote type of deal that I always articulate with our athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Okay. So in contrast to that, what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
I don't know. I can't specifically tell you what the worst advice is. I can retroactively, I can look back now and say that was wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think there's context around it. I think as our field evolves, I think as life and everything evolves, certain things that applied 10 years ago don't necessarily apply now.
Yeah.
I think kind of going back to what the best advice was and kind of like be authentic and knowing yourself, trusting yourself. I can think of very specific circumstances where I was told by, and we're talking in our profession now, told by strength coaches, don't do that because your career is going to go this way. Do that because of whatever. And me and my gut saying, you know what, I think this is the right move for me. No, that's not. But me being true to myself and kind of knowing myself and having that intuition and having the confidence to step out and do what I knew I needed to do. Wasn't that was bad advice. That might have been good advice 10 years ago. It might have been good advice for whatever context they were perceiving. Because like, again, perception is reality, right? They're perceiving something one way. The reality is different than what I see it. But me having the confidence to lead with my own advice, you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily bad advice, but again, going back to good advice, I mean, it all comes down to really, you know, knowing yourself and having the confidence to move forward with that.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. And then last kind of question here on this is, what projects are you currently working on, and how can people kind of reach out to you and follow your journey?
Projects. Well, I've been doing a bit more speaking. I'm going to continue to do that, different webinars for different companies and speaking at conferences and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, the big projects for me, it's funny. A week ago, you know, you're solely focused on basketball and we've been in the grind for 6 months and you're trying to get to March Madness. To now a week later with the way life hits you, like it's just a different vibe, right? And so slowly I'm getting settled into, this is our new reality. We've got to press forward and make the most of this situation. And with that said, I'm slowly getting out of that like high intensity, like basketball season mode to sit down, digesting, reflecting, and embracing what we got, the opportunity that we have moving forward with this off season, which I love this time of year where the new athletes come on campus, we get to mold our team and work toward that common goal. You know what I mean? Put the past behind us. So this is one of my favorite times of year. So, I mean, you talk about projects, it's me sitting down with our basketball staff and we get to map out this off season and where we want to be, what our mantras are going to be, who are we, what's our identity.
Yeah.
What I love about this staff is there is no disconnect between the weight room and on the court basketball. The same language they use on the court is the language I use in here. The expectation and standards on the court is the same standards in here. So I feel very much a part of it. So yeah, when it comes to projects, this off season is going to be phenomenal. I'm excited for that. Our strength department, I think we've got a huge task ahead of us now with this coronavirus. I think, I don't know if we talked about this on camera or off camera, but I think it's going to expose a lot of departments. Who's prepared to handle this or not? And I'm going to make sure that our department is, administration has entrusted a lot of responsibility with us. They've seen the value in what we do. Well, now when some of that perception of, oh, you just coach athletes in the weight room, now when that's gone for an extended period of time, what value are you bringing? And making sure we are continuing to bring that value not only to our athletes, to our department, but just a lot of little projects. I'm excited for that. Following along on social media, just like everyone, at Conaty Sean on all the social platforms, Instagram, Twitter, those are, kind of just little snippets into our life and kind of like our diary. So you can check it there and follow along.
Fantastic. Well, Coach, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time, especially, given the circumstances. It's a great time for coaches to be able to, not just coaches, but everyone to be able to connect and deepen some relationships. So once again, thank you for your time and looking forward to connecting again soon in the future.
Hey, I really appreciate you reaching out. I love your platform. You've had a lot of heavy hitters on this podcast, man. So I'm excited and thankful that you invited me on.